Happy New Year, everyone! This is Sunlight Kitten Sabra, and welcome back to Let's Read Tower of Secrets. When we left off, Victor had just gotten to his office, and now let's continue. The space was distinctly uninspiring. It was a large office, some 500 square feet. The 12-foot ceiling did little to improve the impression of coldness. Apart from the two clocks, there was nothing on the dirty bluish-gray walls, except the portrait of Lenin and a coat rack by the door, a board with a row of hooks. White semi-transparent curtains were permanently drawn across the large, oak-trimmed windows, a security measure to prevent other KGB officers whose window faced the inner courtyard from seeing into this top-secret place. The only furniture consisted of 4 old, heavily scuffed wooden desks, 4 freestanding safes, and several chairs. There was no trace of any attempt to make the room feel hospitable. "Hi, Michael," Victor greeted the KGB officer with whom he shared the office. "What's up?" Michael Zubov was quite the character. One would even be tempted to say a caricature because of the first impression he made. Most startling of Michael's features were his teeth. His well-formed lips could not conceal the lower front teeth that stuck straight forward in a most challenging way. The corresponding upper teeth were a little less assertive, but one tooth on each side was missing. Although he was almost completely bald, he wore unusually long, blond sideburns, scraggly parentheses bracketing the odd features between. These small furry reefs seemed to take on a life of their own, giving him an air of perpetual absent-mindedness. Jeez, that's quite a picture. Belying his appearance, however, was a mind like a steel trap. Nothing escaped Michael, and he seemed to remember everything. Most people thought of Victor was energetic, but in comparison to Michael, Victor was practically catatonic. Barely 5'9", Michael's plumpish body didn't so much move as bounce like a pressurized rubber ball. Michael had an even greater claim to fame. Victor had friends everywhere, but he was a loner compared to Michael, who was constantly wheeling and dealing. He was always helping somebody, and someone was always helping him. If you couldn't get something in Moscow, Michael was the guy to ask. He might not know where to get it himself, but he would certainly know somebody who did. He was the quintessential favors broker. Yet neither greed nor power was his motive. He was driven by compassion, competition, and above all, curiosity. He traded at par, not for profit. The instant Victor's foot crossed the threshold, Michael bounced out of his chair, flashing Victor a grotesque smile. He chirped, "Morning, Victor. Boss is looking for you. I think it's Iran." His natural enthusiasm made it sound like news of unexpected pay raise. Boss was the nickname for Colonel Alexei Platonovich Boysk, first deputy to the chief of Directorate A of the 8th Directorate, or 8th CD. "Thanks. Urgent as always?" "You bet." Victor went quickly to work on opening his safe. It was not a simple procedure. Very few people had this type of lock, even within the 8th CD. First, he examined the seal, a plasticine disc imprinted with his personal seal, covering the crack between the door and the frame. Most people think of safes as strong boxes to protect valuables. For the KGB, however, a safe reflected the attitude about every security measure. While protecting the contents, by far most important function of the KGB's security devices was clearly to register any attempt to break in, successful or not. The seal had not been tampered with. Victor pulled a chain from his pocket and slid a special key from the thin steel sleeve. This double-flanged key was in itself an extraordinarily sophisticated piece of technology. Fashioned in a way that made it impossible to copy, with delicate notches less than 0.02 inches thick. Victor looked at the key carefully. Few people had ever seen such a key. fewer yet knew that such a key was not a projection fluke, but an indicator. Inserted in the wrong way up, the key would get stuck, irretrievably. The whole lock would then have to be changed. A very expensive proposition, but a small price to pay for the extra security. Victor inserted the key into the keyhole of the prominent outer lock. Next, he dialed in his personal 6-digit combination. This number was changed at least twice a year. Only after that could he turn the key gently to open the outer lock, which then opened a gate-like shield, revealing the inner keyhole. Using yet another, larger key, Victor at last was able to swing open the heavy door of the safe. Yeesh, that's quite a procedure. Imagine having to do that every time you went to work. The whole procedure took less than 30 seconds. After working hours, the office space itself was secured by a system that set off an alarm if the air was even slightly disturbed. The cleaning woman was directly supervised by the duty officer. Realistically, the only possible threat to his safe was from someone within the KGB. An outsider might perceive that the redundancy of these security measures as paranoia. In fact, they were a routine expression of the KGB's priorities. For the security was paramount in the KGB. Defense was the key to offense. The worst case was assumed in virtually every situation. Absolutely no one was to be trusted. No expense or resource was spared to assure the most perfect security possible. For Victor, this was by now a natural mindset, quite as important as the existence of any real or imagined intruders. Victor found the file he was looking for and scanned the most recent materials on the Teheran quickly, updating himself on the newest twist in the bizarre crisis. The Politburo and the KGB had become obsessed with the situation in Iran. The Iranian Revolution had come as a total surprise. No one had taken the Ayatollah Khomeini seriously when he was living in exile in Paris. Of course, like every other major intelligence service, the KGB had compiled a thick file on him. But beyond the fundamentalist Muslim slogans, his political program had been a total question mark. The KGB figured him at best a political lightweight, and a junior partner in any future Iranian power structure. Besides, the KGB was so sure that the Shah's hold on power and the effectiveness of his formidable Savak secret police that any threat to his rule seemed unrealistic, certainly in the short run. In the long run, the military seemed to be the only potential alternative power base. But a pro-Soviet military coup was unlikely because most of the Iranian officers were closely tied to the United States through training and other forms of cooperation. The first reaction to the revolution was an attempt to use it for Soviet interests, but frantic efforts to get reliable information had only resulted in highly controversial tidbits from which no conclusions could be drawn. However, at least the emphatically anti-American trend of the events was encouraging. The Politburo could not imagine why anyone who was anti-American could also be anti-Soviet. As a result, even more frantic efforts were made to establish friendly relations with the Mullads, or whatever. Yeah, I probably really butchered that, but I don't care. Mullahs or something. Perceiving the cool reception as a bargaining tactic, the Soviet representative just kept raising offers of future cooperation between the People's Iran and the People's Soviet Union. Slowly, euphoria turned into astonishment, then outright bafflement. Finally, the Soviet intelligence concluded that the Ayatollah Khomeini was neither simply a king for a day, nor even a shrewd bargainer looking for a good price for strategic cooperation with the Soviet Union. He was now seen as a madman and a hostile force to be reckoned with.